Ever encountered a charismatic leader who exuded charm, yet left you feeling uneasy? Or witnessed the erosion of trust and the impact of manipulation within a religious community? If so, you are not alone. Religious narcissism is a pervasive issue that affects individuals seeking spiritual growth and community connection. In our society, religious figures hold a unique position of influence and authority. They are seen as spiritual guides, moral compasses, and sources of comfort for many. However, behind the facade of piety and benevolence, there exists a disturbing reality: the presence of religious narcissists. These individuals exploit their religious status to manipulate, control, and harm those around them. In this video and others, we unravel the intricate layers of this phenomenon, shedding light on their tactics, the damage they cause, and empowering individuals to break free from their grasp.
Praise, hallelujah. Give him some praise, hallelujah. To be a in the name of Jesus, I'll be a living sanctuary for Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and and with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
There was a disturbing statistic that says 90% of pastors are narcissistic and abusive. When we think of pastors and religious leaders, we often envision individuals who are compassionate, selfless, and devoted to serving their communities. However, beneath the surface, some pastors may possess narcissistic traits that can negatively impact their congregations. Determining an exact percentage of pastors who are religious narcissists is challenging due to several factors. First, narcissism exists on a spectrum, ranging from mild to extreme. Secondly, narcissists are often skilled at masking their true nature, making it difficult to identify them within the clergy. And lastly, studies on this topic are limited, and data can vary depending on the sample size and the research methodology. See, although concrete statistics are scarce, some studies and anecdotal evidence shed light on the prevalence of religious narcissism among pastors. These findings may challenge our preconceived notions. Here are a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. That there are, from what we can see, an uptick in clergy abuse scandals. There are high-profile cases of religious leaders being involved in abuse scandals. So that is an indication of the prevalence of narcissistic behavior within the clergy. These cases, though not representative of all pastors, bring attention to the importance of addressing religious narcissism. The second factor is there some limited study and surveys. Now, they suggest there is a small but significant percentage of pastors exhibiting narcissistic traits. While these exact percentages vary, estimates range from 10% to 20% or higher, depending on the sample size and the criteria used. And then, thirdly, you see that there is a lot of anecdotal experiences. Many individuals have personal stories of encounters with narcissistic pastors, sharing experiences of manipulation, control, and emotional abuse within their congregations. These narratives underscore the need for awareness and discernment when it comes to choosing spiritual leaders. Now, these narratives are out there, including my own. So today we are going to talk about the first installment of the Pastor's Daughter Provoked, the bookcast. And one of the things that I highlight in the book are the spiritual abuse tactics of religious narcissists. The spiritual abuse tactics of religious narcissists. So today we're going to start with religious coercion. And to begin, I want us to listen to a recording. And this is a recording that I released this week, the first iteration of the bookcast. And so we're going to listen to a bit of it so that once we have this discussion about coercion, we are familiar with how it sounds and what it looks like. So let's get into this recording.
The Pastor's Daughter, a memoir series. Volume 1. Provoked. Written and narrated by Dolores Michelle Peters. Trigger warning. Provoked contains content that may be triggering or distressing for some listeners. This series delves into sensitive topics, including religious trauma, emotional challenges, and complex family dynamics. Episodes may include discussions on abuse, emotional distress, and mental health. Please be advised that listening to this content may evoke strong emotional responses or memories. If you are sensitive to these themes or have experienced trauma, consider whether this content is suitable for you at this time. It is crucial to prioritize your mental and emotional well-being. If you find that the content becomes overwhelming, we encourage you to take a break or seek support from friends, family, or mental health professionals. Your well-being is of the utmost importance. If you proceed with listening, we appreciate your understanding and acknowledge the importance of creating a safe and supportive space for all listeners. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek immediate help.
Prologue. It was all too familiar.
You know what? Fuck all y'all. Every one of you motherfuckers. Every one of you. You want to play a game with me? Come on. Let's go. Let's game up. Come on. You want to play a game? I got games for every one of you motherfuckers.
His tone sent a...
Okay, I want to stop it there. Let's stop it there and let's get into this discussion about coercion, because that's what you just heard. Okay, that's what you just heard. And let me just go back just a little bit and let me play.
Proceed with listening. We appreciate your understanding.
Sensation through my chest to the...
You want to play a game? I got games for every one of you motherfuckers.
His tone sent a...
Fuck all.
It was all too familiar.
You know what? Fuck all y'all. Every one of you motherfuckers. Every one of you. You want to play a game with me? Come on. Let's go. Let's game up. Come on. You want to play a game? I got games for every one of you motherfuckers.
His tone sent a piercing sensation.
Okay, so let's get into the dialogue that you hear. Now, you guys know that 2 years ago today, I released volume 1 of my memoir series, which is entitled The Pastor's Daughter Provoked, which is the cover that you see there on the screen. Speaking of, if you have not gotten my book yet, please go and get my book, honey. It is filled with a lot of great information and insights into religious narcissism. But today we're going to get into one of the spiritual abuse tactics, which is coercion, religious coercion. Now, you may be familiar with other types of abuse, right? Domestic or other types of domestic abuse, domestic violence, physical violence, verbal abuse, and things like that. But there is a more subtle type of abuse, and it is equally as harmful, and that is religious coercion, and that actually coercion. Let me take it back to just the basic level, right? Now, religious narcissists put a religious spin on their narcissistic behavior. That is a key difference between a what you would call a regular narcissist, or what I'll call a regular narcissist for these purposes, and the difference between a regular narcissist and a religious narcissist. The main thing is that they use religion to abuse people, to escape responsibility for their behavior or to justify their behavior. And before we get into the religious aspect of it, let's just talk about it on the very basic level, right? Without the religious spin that that religious narcissists put on it. And that is just coercive control. And coercive control is a strategic form of ongoing oppression and terrorism. It's a form of domestic abuse that involves patterns of behavior that are aimed at controlling, dominating, and subjugating another person. Typically, it's a partner or a family member. It goes beyond physical violence. And there is a range of other tactics and characteristics that are presented instead of, usually in lieu of, physical violence. And sometimes it's in addition to physical violence. So the point of these types of behavior is to make the victim dependent on the person, the religious narcissist or the narcissist in this case. And they make you dependent by isolating you from your sources of support, by exploiting you, by depriving you of the means to be independent, to resist them, or to escape from them. They control your everyday life. And so I wanted to play this recording from the audiobook bookcast so that you can actually hear what it sounds like. Now, in recent years, the concept of coercive control, or the realization of coercive control, has caused some people or some lawmakers to really look at making coercive control a crime. Now, there are some countries that have already made it illegal, including the UK, and that's been since 2015, but it's not considered illegal yet in the United States. I do believe that there are that in New York they have looked heavily into it. I'm not sure, and I probably should have looked it up for the purposes of this video to see if that law has been passed completely yet. But the last time I checked, it was in review. Now, anyone can experience coercive control. So it's not necessarily grounded in any type of gender base. But what I have noticed is that there is predominantly male who inflict this coercive control onto others. However, I don't want us to get caught up in that, because I think that what happens is a lot of females, they kind of are not on the radar because we don't typically think that females will engage in this type of behavior. Now, there are some major signs of coercive control, and we're going to get into that today. But I want us to really focus on the religious aspect of coercive control. So let me play a little bit more of this video so that you can get a little bit more context as into how religious coercion works.
Through my chest to the pit of my lower abdomen. I didn't have to see his face. The image ingrained. His eyes were squinting and black. His lips would become paper thin and tight. His face would flush with fury. His jaw would grind and pulse, and his stance would shift as if he were preparing for a physical attack. It was the voice of my father, the pastor, and it was all too familiar. He wasn't yelling. In fact, he was relatively calm. It was a cold calm that often disarmed people and weakened their defenses as his rage subtly increased.
Here, I want to highlight this, what I just said there in the audiobook, that oftentimes my father's rage, and a lot of times the tactics of a coercive controller, they go unnoticed. They are often looked at as the person being protective, or maybe being just a little overprotective, but protective nonetheless. They look like concern, maybe a little bit of insecurity, but maybe we can work through that. And so here are a couple of tactics. And I think that what really fools people is that it's not always the rage in what we typically think of rage looking like, right? We don't typically think of control as someone being calm, using a calm tone. We think of it as someone who is yelling and really exerting a lot of physical strength over the other person. But what you'll find is that, especially while we're talking about this in the tactics of a religious narcissist, which is someone who typically works with a lot of people, so they have been able to kind of hone and fine tune those skills so that they appear to be friendly, or they appear to be protective, or they appear to be providers. They appear to be concerned about your soul and your well-being. They appear to be strong. But these coercive controllers are the weakest people. And I want you to take weakness as in the physical sense. They can exert physical strength over you, even mental strength in a lot of cases. But there is a fundamental weakness in their character that causes them to engage in this type of behavior. So a couple of tactics that coercive controllers use is isolation. Now, a coercive controller, and I say, let's just call it an abuser, right? Because coercive controller sounds like a lot. That's too many words to say, okay? So we just call them an abuser. So the abuser will isolate the victim from their friends, their family, and other potential sources of support. So that makes it hard for not only the person to escape in the event that they need to get help and that they need to get away from their abuser, but it also keeps people from seeing what is going on with you, right? So sometimes it's difficult for a person to realize that they're being abused. And sometimes it takes another person to say something like, you know, I noticed that that person was treating you that way. And that's not right. How do you feel about that? Even something like that will alert a victim that they are being abused. But an abuser will isolate their victim so that no one can give them that advice. No one can look in and say, something doesn't look right here. Another tactic is that the abuser will degrade you, right? Including verbal abuse, manipulation, humiliation, constant criticism. And this is designed to really take a hit at your self-esteem and to make you more dependent on the abuser. Because if you believe that you have all of these flaws, then you are more likely to lean on the abuser, thinking that that person will help with those flaws. Hold on one second, you guys. Come here. Babe, you just made me realize something. I think no, I haven't been on me. I just haven't been on video. Hey, honey. Yeah, my husband just came in. Say hey, Phil.
Hey. Hey, y'all.
What's going on?
Never much.
Okay. We're talking about religious coercion today. Mm-hmm. Did my package come in? Is it out there yet? The treadmill thing?
Oh, I didn't see it.
No, it'll be here soon. What's up?
Gonna get cleaned up.
You look nice. Yeah, good.
Your
haircut looks nice.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, can I get back started, honey?
Yeah. I went to Lowe's. Got some goodies.
Okay. I'll be in a minute. So look at them. Did you get me something?
No.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a weed eater.
Okay. Y'all.
Oh, blower.
Go get your feel. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, my husband loves his gadgets, y'all. Okay. He said he got a weed eater and a leaf blower. Child, seem like he get a new one every year. Like how many weed eaters and leaf blowers do you need, child? Anyways, as soon as he came in here, y'all instantly got hot. Like physically hot. Where my fan? Y'all, hold on. Why did I instantly get hot? Okay. Anyways, so we are on degrading. And so what you'll hold on, y'all. I see now I gotta gather myself back together. You see how the man just throws me all the way off. Okay, we were talking about isolation and we were talking about degrading. The third characteristic is monitoring and controlling behavior. Now, what you'll notice is that this person will try to share phones, share social media, and sometimes that those types of behaviors seem to be, just out of concern or protection. But when you look at the totality of these characteristics, and I would suggest that you look at the totality of them. I wouldn't take one, maybe one or two of these characteristics and totally consider the person to be a coercive controller. It may be behaviors that have become a bit of a trauma response, right? But you have to look at the totality of these behaviors in order to really realize that the person is a spiritual abuser or a abuser that uses coercion as a tactic. Now, another tactic is threats and intimidation. So this abusers will use threats to keep you in line, and oftentimes, um, we see that sometimes these people are not physically violent, which makes it very hard for you to really detect it. But another thing that I've noticed is that they have a propensity to violence or they have already been violent. And so maybe they stop the physical violence, the physical behavior, but oftentimes that has already put a person in a controlled position, right? If you know that a person can and will because they have physically abused you, it does control your behavior. It keeps you from doing certain things because you don't want to trigger that behavior that you received in the past. And even if it's been years and years since a person has physically harmed you, the fact that they ever did it is etched in your mind. It's there. You know that the person can and will abuse you physically. Um, Another thing that they will do is use other threats like taking away your children, taking away access, other forms of retaliation that you just don't want, right? Taking away other things that you have, that you love. Um, and those are threats and intimidation. And then there is economic abuse, where a person has access to your financial resources, making it difficult for you to leave or making it difficult for you to access your money. Another characteristic is emotional and psychological abuse. This involves manipulation, gaslighting, and other tactics. And I think that we are pretty familiar what gaslighting is and manipulation, so we can easily identify those things. But can you easily identify those things when they are encapsulated by religion, when the person puts a religious spin on it? Now, the final characteristic or the final tactic that I'm going to talk about here is sexual coercion. Now, this involves pressure and force into sexual activities without consent. Um, and that is another aspect of this type of abuse. Now, coercive control is recognized in some legal frameworks, right? But this is relatively recent, which is an indication that there still is a lot of work that needs to be done in this area that um, is relatively new, and that any type of information that we could provide about our experiences with coercive control is something that's really going to help this thing really come to light and really help people to break free and to heal from it. So if you have an experience with coercive control, I encourage you to reach out to me. I want to hear your story, and I want to share your story with other daughters who may be experiencing this or who need to just be aware of what to look for and how to recognize coercive control. Now, I want us to talk about the religious aspect of it. And as we get into the religious aspect, I want to play another portion of this video, and that's really going to highlight how religion is used to really push these coercive behaviors. Okay. So let's get into that now.
But I was completely in tune with his emotions, a skill I developed as a child, and how I survived growing up in constant fear. He gave these tantrums in doses, a toxic cocktail of verbal abuse, manipulation, and control, encapsulated by religion, which made it palatable. But anger was the active ingredient.
And that's what you will notice, that when you are dealing with an abuser, that underlying there is anger, there is hatred, there is there is a really dark demonic force that is within these individuals. Now, if you would just look at the body language here without even really listening to the words, then you will see how coercive control can even play out in the person's physical body. So you would have to be looking for characteristics that are also nonverbal. Okay. So let me just play it back a little bit. Okay. And let's just take in body language for a moment before we move any further. Okay. Now I'm going to place this on mute so that you don't hear the words, but that you just focus on the body language alone. Okay. Cocktail of verbal. Like I totally just muted it, didn't I? Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Help is on the way. Hold on, my peoples. Hold on. Lord help me.
Abuse, manipulation, and control, encapsulated by religion, which may.
So you notice the body language here. You notice even the hitting of the chest, the facial expressions. You have to realize that coercive control involves also nonverbal communications. So when you see a person, even in public, right? Let's just say that you can see coercive control happening in public, right? There are times when you see these people in public and they may not say a word, okay? They may not say a word. It's a look. It's a pause. It's something, it's a shift in their body language. It's the way that they stand that reminds you that that person will harm you. It puts you right back in line. And I think that that is what becomes so difficult for people to really realize and to identify, and for people who aren't experiencing it to really sympathize with and have compassion for. Because you think that a person's physical presence and their body language would not have the impact and would not be able to put you in line, so to speak, the way that it does. I mean, think about how a parent can look at a child and that is acting up and that child get right back in line just like that. But just imagine that being done on a very dysfunctional level between adults in a religious setting in places where this ought not be. Okay? So let's continue. I'm going to unmute here so we can continue listening to this recording. I want you to hear this specific part, and then we're going to get into the characteristics of religious narcissists and how when religion is put on it, makes it even more difficult to identify and to break free from. Let's continue.
He gave these tantrums in doses, a toxic cocktail of verbal abuse, manipulation, and control, encapsulated by religion, which made it palatable. But anger was the active ingredient.
I want you to know I meant well, to this church. I meant well to my family. Y'all don't deserve me. You won't give me another hour. You won't have me another hour. Not another second. Not one. You just lost. It don't look like you won, but you're lost. Fuck you. Fuck you. He's trying to help me. You join the ranks of everybody. Let's play on the pastor.
It was the subtleties in the way he said things.
It was the subtleties in the way he said things. You hear the calmness of his voice, but when you hear the words, you see what I'm saying? You hear the calmness, right? And it's relatively monotone until he says the FU part. Then it gets a little amped up there, right? But there are subtleties in the way a coercive controller operates, especially when they are using religion to do it. Now, this is what he said. I want you to know that I meant well. I meant well to this church and I meant well to this family. What does that mean? What does that mean? If you are someone who has had any type of experience with coercive control and religious coercion, you know that that is a pastor's threat to remove his protections of his congregation, to remove his protections of the people who he says that God gave him charge over, right? So to a person who is under this type of leadership, this type of spiritual leadership, the implication is that the pastor is the one that protects you. And because you have angered the pastor, he removes all his protections and therefore the devil just can have his way with you. The devil has free reign over you. It is a veiled threat and a somewhat indirect threat. But when you are someone who has a strong religious belief, you've been raised in a church, or you have come to truly believe this with your heart and soul, this type of threat, you don't want that. This type of threat means internal or eternal damnation. This means hellfire. This means you have made God angry because you have made his pastor angry. He says, y'all don't deserve me. You won't get me another hour. It'll look like you just lost. It'll look like you won, but you lost. And then he says, F you. F you. Where is that in the Bible? I mean, I didn't see that in none of my texts. You know what I'm saying? I got the King James Version. I got the New Living Translation. I got the I got all kinds of versions of the Bible, and I have never seen in there F you. He says you join the ranks of everybody. Playing on the pastor. Just play on him. In religious coercive control, that refers to the misuse of religion and spirituality to dominate, manipulate, and control individuals or groups. Often within the context of a family, an intimate relationship, or a religious organization. This form of coercive control, you guys, exploits the victim's religious beliefs and practices to justify or facilitate abuse. Can you see how there was even a grooming process to weaken us to the point where this coercive behavior, these fear tactics, this intimidation, the misuse of religious texts and teaching, isolation from even other churches, shaming and guilting, threatening spiritual consequences. This is a threat of a spiritual consequence for angering the pastor. And I'm sure what comes up now is like, well, why would he do that? Well, why? What would make a person say what he said? What would make a person do what he's done? And we're going to get into that. But not in this video. In this video, we just need to know what is happening. And we need to know that God has not given us a spirit of fear. And what happens is a person uses coercive control to instill fear. And the point of instilling fear is to get you to do whatever they want you to do. And I can guarantee you, it ain't got nothing to do with God or building God's kingdom. It has nothing to do with your soul being saved. It has nothing to do with you going to heaven. It has nothing to do with you living a good life right here on earth. It is for the sole purpose of building up the ego of one very sick individual or a collection of sick individuals. So this form of coercive control exploits the victim's religious beliefs and practices to justify or facilitate abuse, creating an environment where questioning or resisting the abuser's authority is framed as disobedience. It's framed as touch not my anointing, do my prophets no harm. It's framed as thou shalt honor thy mother and thy father. It's framed as God put me here and you can't say anything about it. It's a complex issue. And we would be wrong for looking at this in a totally religious way. But we'd also be wrong for looking at it in a total mental health way. We have to look at them both. And I think that where we go wrong is in the church, we say, well, we don't look at the mental health. We're only looking at the spiritual aspect of things. We're only looking at it from a religious lens. And then when you get out into the world, the secular environment, then they're only going to look at it from a mental health aspect. They don't want to touch the religion. And that is why we can never really uncover what is happening here, because we do not look at it in its whole. Because when we look at the definition and the characteristics of coercive control, of narcissism, let's just go to narcissism. When we look at the characteristics of narcissism and religious narcissism, there is really no difference. Right? But the religious narcissist has at least grasped the concept that they can really wreak havoc by using your spirituality and your religion as the vehicle to manipulate and control you, to abuse you. So they misuse religious texts and teachings. They'll selectively select different quotes, different scriptures from the Bible, taking them out of context, using them to justify their behavior when it has absolutely nothing to do with them. They use it to subjugate you, to punish you, to restrict where you go and what you do. They use your spirituality to justify abusing you. So they'll say, hey, this is divine. This is, God ordained this. And even when it doesn't present in the Bible, then they'll make a justification for that. Oh, well, this is just what God told me. They isolate you. And this was not readily apparent to us, even in my own church, until we were isolated from fellowshipping with other churches and other churches that we had previously fellowshipped with. And that was purposely designed to keep people from really being stolen from other churches, right? And really, you can say like stolen, but if you resonate with a specific ministry, if that is where God is calling you to be, then that is where you should be. But when you have someone who uses religious isolation, then their point is to say, hey, this is where you belong. And you shouldn't have any other options. They take all the other options off the table, which is, again, not the way it's supposed to be. They'll even control how you practice your religion, when you pray, how you pray, limiting your access to other religious services and communities. Or even forcing you to practice certain religious beliefs against your will. They use shame and guilt. And I believe that this is one of the main things that keep people from speaking out about spiritual abuse. And even the different aspects of spiritual abuse, including religious coercion, is because of the shame and the guilt. And that is because abusers use religious concepts like sin, guilt, and shame to control you, making you believe that you are the blame for anything that happens in life. Now, the Bible says that it rains on the just as well as the unjust, right? But a harmful religious teaching is to believe that because you are a believer or because you identify as Christian or whatever your belief is that you aren't supposed to be rained on. Everybody gets rained on. Life happens to everybody. There are ups and downs. There's positives and negatives. There's a plus and minuses to everything that we experience. So to say that we will never experience anything bad, or that what we experience that we deem as not favorable is because we are somehow in sin, is a fallacy. That's wrong. It's just not true. But a person who engages in spiritual abuse and religious coercion will use even the common cold to make you believe that you have somehow sinned, and that is why you have a cold. And then they threaten you with spiritual consequences. You're going to hell. You're going to be excommunicated from this church. And when you are excommunicated from a church, you can be, it's as devastating, or it can be as devastating as totally being ostracized from the whole community that you've ever known. All the people that you've ever been around, that you've ever known. So you are essentially alone in this world. That's how some people feel when they have been excommunicated from their religious organizations. But oftentimes that is a tactic used by abusers, religious narcissists, to keep you in line and to keep you subjugated to a religion or to practices that are not of God. And then they exploit their religious authority. They hold these positions of authority and they use that status to legitimize their control over you. And they use that to keep you from seeking help anywhere else. So, I believe that what makes it so challenging, again, from what I said earlier, is that there really is no way that I can see where we can actually go into these different arenas, different organizations, and really do a poll, to really see, like, how many religious narcissists are there? How many how many narcissistic pastors out there? Because if we are to take in the belief that 90% of pastors are narcissistic and abusive, then that's the indication, y'all, that we should be leaving the churches in droves, and not just leaving the churches, right? Not just leaving the churches, because these people are not just in the churches. They're all over social media. For the most part, most of them have left the church because they realize that their area of influence is so much greater when they're online, when they're on social media, when they're sitting behind a keyboard, a camera, and a microphone. And all they have to do is engage in some of these here tactics. And that's how they're able to abuse you. And it's almost like laughable and unreal, because it's like, really? Like, really? How? How is this able to happen? Because we don't really recognize it, right? One thing, we don't recognize it because it's veiled in religious language. There are a lot of things in the Bible, a lot of language in the Bible that is problematic, violent, dangerous. And we really have to be honest about that factor, because it's not, a lot of times is not really people just taking this stuff and it's just like they're just grabbing it out of thin air. No, some of these things are in the text that we say we believe. So we ourselves are taking certain aspects of the Bible and leaving certain aspects of the Bible. And I don't really know what the answer is there. But what I say is that, like, I ask God to give me discernment, to even sift through what is harmful and what is helpful, even in the Bible. Then there are cultural and religious implications, right? And I believe that what we'll find is that there is a much higher number of religious narcissists in the Black community than there are in any other race. Why? Because it's cultural for us to be religious. We are a religious race of people. It's part of our culture. And when something has become so part of your culture, so ingrained in the fabric of the culture in which you are a part of, it becomes very, very difficult to break free from that fabric. How do you even support the individuals who are abused without alienating them and without further victimizing them? And then how do you address the issue with the abuser without alienating them and further abusing them? Because it has been true that hurt people hurt people. And if we are truly compassionate people and we really truly love people, then it comes with a level of understanding that those who abused us were themselves abused. No, it doesn't justify, but it does add a level of awareness and wisdom of the situation that we really cannot afford to not acknowledge. If we don't acknowledge that our abusers were abused, then we are doing ourselves a disservice and we will never truly get to the root of the problem. Then there is the legal and the social support systems, right? Because there is no legal system for believers. That is something that I am developing. It's called Kingdom Court, trademark pending. And this is a system where believers receive redemption, vindication, and justice. Because part of the reason why this is able to go on and spiritual abusers are able to like duplicate themselves. Because one thing that you can guarantee is as you are looking at the man on the screen, who is my father, you can be sure that he has duplicated his religious narcissism. It didn't just stop with him, it didn't start with him. It's not going to end with him. I can already tell you that I have brothers who are also religious narcissists. This is an infection. Dr. Ramani calls it the epidemic of our time. And truthfully, we need to be giving it the same attention that we did COVID, the same attention that we do the flu. You know what I'm saying? We need to give it the same attention that we do other problems in our society. And one of those things is developing a system that supports those who have been abused as well as the abuser. Because how are we even doing the abuser any justice when we don't allow them to be redeemed? We don't have a redemption system currently. How do these people get into good graces? What are the corrective actions when we have seen that there is spiritual abuse that has taken place and we expose it? Then what? Then what? And then the other factor that makes it so hard to address religious coercion is that we just don't have community. What happened to community? When an abuser speaks out about spiritual abuse, the abuser is ostracized from their religious community. It happens every day, all day. It happens all the time. And then you think to yourself, if I speak out, then I'm going to be further abused, ostracized, isolated, alone. And sometimes you'd rather just deal with the abuse. You'd rather just take it. You'd rather just sit there every Sunday knowing that it's not right. Feeling conflicted in your spirit, feeling sick in your body. Vexed, y'all. But you sit there because you'll lose your community if you don't. But I had to ask myself, and this is the challenging question I'm going to ask you guys as well, right? Is that really a community that you want to be part of? Is that really the community for you? And if you can't identify with that, right? I don't identify with with this type of behavior. I want my faith to be respected. I want to worship with people that I love and in a community that I love, but that has shared beliefs, like not a community that enables abusers. And so I want to challenge you all today to think about if that's the community for you. And if you are looking for a new community, a real community, okay? One that supports healing, one that supports asking questions, right? Because what I've noticed is that, like, you can't even ask questions. That's not what God is about. Because how do you increase your discernment if you don't ask questions? And God wants us to have discernment. It's a gift that He gave us. But when you are being spiritually abused, coerced, terrorized, you're not using your discernment. You can't. You can't thrive in that type of environment. And so if you are someone who is trying to break free from toxicity, from spiritual abuse, from religious trauma, then this is the community for you. It's a community of daughters, discerning daughters, divine daughters, who aren't afraid to stand up to even their fathers, to their spiritual fathers, to father figures, and say, hey, no, you have an impact. You have power. And I won't stand back and allow you to abuse people, to abuse your power, and to abuse your impact and influence for your own personal gain or for any reason. And so I encourage you all today to break free. If this resonates with you and you know someone who is suffering from spiritual abuse, trying to break free from spiritual abuse, the toxic relationship with their parent, with their faith community or their pastor, and make sure you send them this video. Like and share. Make sure that you subscribe. And forgive me for having these Invisaligns in. You know, it gives me the juicy mouth. Okay. So, so I was kind of probably talking with a list, but I love y'all. And it's important to raise awareness of spiritual abuse. Because even if you aren't able to identify it for or call it spiritual abuse, it's not okay that it's happening to you. It's not okay that it's happening to people we love. It's not okay for someone to use religion to coerce us. It's not okay to be coerced at all. But then you want to use my God to do it? How dare you? How dare you? And so I want to leave you guys with this video, okay? Because y'all know we got a big God. And I've been doing these little TikTok dance, this little TikTok dance video, y'all. And I'm getting my whole life off of it, okay? Like, I have so much fun. It gives me so much energy. So I just want to share one of these videos with you as we go out. But I want you guys to know that I love you, okay? I love you so much. And I want you guys to break free from what is holding you back from being the daughter that you were meant to be. I don't know if you guys watch King Jives, but sometime I used to watch him quite a bit. And he always used to say, daughter of God, daughter of God, and I just used to love that. I was like, I need a little sound bite of him saying daughter of God, because like that's who we are. A lot of us were abandoned by our fathers, never knew our fathers. Some of us had our fathers in our lives, like I did. But he was a religious narcissist and a spiritual abuser. So he abused us. We all have, our different stories as daughters. But one thing that we share is that we are daughters. And so we should bring that experience and that story here. So if you want to share your story, let me put my email in the chat. And I want you guys to reach out to me. I want you to tell your story. This is the platform for you to be supported, to be loved. You won't be judged over here, child, okay? Because we don't do that over here, child. We just love you. We just love you over here, like for real, for real. None of this this fake love that they got out here, child. So my email is in the chat. So make sure that you shoot me an email if you love to tell your story of spiritual abuse, religious coercion, toxic relationships, religious trauma, any of those things, then please reach out to me, honey. I am your girl. This is a safe space over here, so we would love to hear from you. And so I am going to end the stream with this video. And remember, you guys, you are important to me. I need you to survive. Bye-bye for now.